Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. A warm welcome to all of you. My name is Raúl Valdez, and I'm the team leader at the UNESCO Institute for Lifelong Learning. Today, the Institute, together with Shanghai Open University, and in collaboration with the International Association of Universities, is hosting the webinar to launch two publications on the vital role of higher education institutions for lifelong learning. The publications present the latest international trends of lifelong learning in higher education based on a survey among almost 400 universities worldwide, as well as international practices in all regions of the world. In today's webinar, we will have the chance to listen from different partners the latest international trends of lifelong learning in higher education. You will be able to place your questions in the Q&A section, and we will have the chance to respond as much as possible to all of them. Well, without further delay, let us kick off the meeting by giving the floor to Mr. Boren Chakroun, Director at Interim of the UNESCO Institute for Lifelong Learning. Boren, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Raúl, and very good morning to maybe good afternoon, good evening to all colleagues who are joining us from different parts of the world. We are more than 200 participants today, and we are pleased with that. Let me thank all colleagues who are joining us. But first of all, let me also address my colleagues and Honorable Dr. Mr. Jia, who is the president of the Shanghai Open University, and my colleague Helge, who is the also the Secretary General of the International Association of Universities. We are very pleased to join our collaboration today and to advance the agenda that we have been working in since a few years. And it is, of course, with the great pleasure that we are making this official launch of the two publications highlighting the vital role of higher education institution for lifelong learning. We gather virtually united with the shared vision to embrace the transformative power of lifelong learning in shaping healthier, more prosperous, and more inclusive societies. And this is, I believe, a common value that we all share. But we are colleagues in a moment in an era of disruption, rapid technological advancement, escalating climate crisis, enduring social inequalities, and sometimes polarization in societies, demographic shifts and implications for learning and for lifelong learning. But it's time for us to reimagine how we shape learning and how we shape lifelong learning together for all people, for all ages, for all people everywhere. And to ensure that education system, in particular higher education system, contribute to advancing the Sustainable Development Goal 4 on quality education and lifelong learning opportunities for all. So while advancing this, we need to take into account that those challenges requires mobilization of all the stakeholders, in particular universities. And let me say that almost a year ago, UNESCO orchestrated two significant intergovernmental conferences that left, from my perspective, an indelible mark on the global education landscape. The first conference in Barcelona centered on reimagining higher education. The second, not very far, but still in another continent, in Marrakesh, focusing on adult learning and education. Both gathering underscored the paramount importance of offering lifelong learning opportunities for all, regardless of age and background. In reality, both conferences served as a powerful reminder that education institutions, especially higher education institutions, play a vital role in fostering and promoting lifelong learning opportunities. They highlighted the need for higher education institutions to embrace their role and responsibility in equipping individuals with the knowledge, skills, and wider competences to thrive in a rapidly changing world. Together, both conferences sparked a renewed commitment to enhancing the role of higher education institutions in advancing SDG 4 and transforming education summit recommendations as were adopted in New York last year. All of this is toward more critical role of higher education institution offering lifelong learning programs and opportunities. This is a collaborative endeavor. UNESCO Institute for Lifelong Learning, Shanghai Open Universities, and International Association of Universities in a way anticipated on those directions and launched 3 years ago an important research project regarding the role of higher education institutions advancing lifelong learning. This initiative and its preliminary results contributed to the debates in both conferences I mentioned earlier. But these initiatives complement major initiatives that UNESCO has been conducting through different entities within the House. A report on flexible learning pathways organized by our Institute for Planning in Paris. A work on micro-credentials that has been conducted by different entities within UNESCO at the headquarters in Bangkok office and through our institute in Latin America, ISALC. This work is also framed within the higher education reimagining roadmap that was discussed in Barcelona and which is articulated in the direction that we would like to give to higher education. Last point within which this initiative is framed, we are adopting and we have adopted the Global Convention on the Recognition of Higher Education Qualification. And this convention entered into force in March last year. And we will be organizing an intergovernmental conference early July to set up the conditions for implementing this convention. So colleagues, this work that we are launching today is framed within this broader role, but it's also reaffirming the vital role that to play by higher education institution in advancing our societies and advancing economies. But we are faced with many challenges to do that. And to take this journey, we think that there are 3 aspects that are important to consider. First, higher education institutions must offer more flexible learning pathways and provision and assessment for adult learners. Second, they should cultivate innovative pedagogies that recognize and make use of learners' prior work and life experiences. Third, they must establish flexible learning pathways, which include strengthening of information and career guidance services. So today, as we unveil the outcome report of our 3-year research project, and they will be presented in details by my colleagues, I would like to express my gratitude to those who accompanied us in this journey and collaborated with us. First of all, I extend my deepest appreciation to our partners from Shanghai Open Universities for their unwavering support, to Mr. Wai Jia, President of this Shanghai Open University, Ms. Wen Yuan, former President of Shanghai Open University, Mr. Jin Zhang, Vice President of Shanghai Open University, Ms. Zhua Wang, Director of International Cooperation, our dedicated colleagues, Ms. Yun Han and Ms. Xiaoxie Xue. I would like also to thank the International Association of Universities, my colleague and my friend Helge, Secretary General Mrs. Helge van Tland. But of course, this would not have been possible without the expertise and expansive network of the association, the International Association of Universities network, and their mobilization we covered, and this will be detailed by my colleagues, more than 400 universities who responded to the survey that we conducted. And I would like also to express my sincere thanks to the project advisory group comprising of international experts from universities, UNESCO and regional university association, which accompanied us throughout the project. It's very important, your support, and I'm sure that many of our colleagues who accompanied us are with us today. So I would like to highlight this support and collaboration, and my deepest grateful to the collaboration that we have had. And I'm sure that we've set a baseline for continuing the collaboration and for advancing the work that UNESCO Institute for Lifelong Learning and Shanghai Open University are continuing collaborating, and we have a partnership on other initiatives that will be unveiled as we move forward on the employability of higher education graduate, on the digital transformation, and on intergenerational approaches. So I think we should leverage this collaboration that we have had and advance it as a way to advance SDG 4 and as a way to advance this transformative agenda. Let me finish by mentioning three challenges that I see ahead of us that we have to cover as well in the collaboration that we are envisaging. First, data and evidence. The contribution of higher education institution to lifelong learning is barely mentioned and is barely captured by the data we have. Today, according to our Institute for Statistics in Montreal, the number of students globally stood around 220 million. But this is not right. There are much more participants and much more beneficiaries than the official data that we have, because we are not including in the data we are capturing and data we are sharing the lifelong learning effort of universities. So it's very important that we invest in collecting data, in sharing, in processing, and in valorizing how universities are contributing to lifelong learning. So more accurate data, more valid data is very important. The second is about credentialing. Of course, the work we have done have highlighted the importance of learning pathways, of flexible learning pathways. But we see an emerging and developing credentialing landscape with micro-credentials, with badges, with other way of representing the learning. And the way we would like to represent this will be very important. So looking at the credentialing landscape and how it is impacting the way lifelong learning is shaped and the role of universities seems to me important. Last but not least is about financing. One of the major challenges is how we will fund lifelong learning and how we'll fund the contribution of universities to lifelong learning. There are different measures that exist today, training funds, lifelong learning entitlements, another form that we'll have to capture, including the partnership with the private sector in some contexts and some cases. So these are some challenges that I'm sure in our discussion today we'll be covering. I would like to thank again our partners from Shanghai Open Universities, from International Association of Universities, and I look forward to listening to the discussion and our deliberations today. Back to you, Carlos. Raul, thank you.
Thank you very much, Warren. Thank you for framing the topic in today's challenges and how higher education can contribute to address these challenges, but also how UNESCO is addressing all these different issues and suggesting specific actions to be taken. Thank you for that. I think we'll have a chance to go deeper into the different aspects you mentioned, and would like to present then a video from President Jia from the Shanghai Open University. I don't know if we can see the video. Yes, please, go ahead.
尊敬的联合国教科文组织终身学习研究所乔克罗恩所长先生，尊敬的国际大学协会秘书长兰德女士，各位专家，下午好。首先，我代表上海开放大学对今天所有参加发布会的嘉宾表示衷心的感谢，感谢长期以来对上海开放大学的关注，感谢对上海开放大学与 URL 合作项目的支持。2019年底，在中国联合国教科文组织全国委员会、上海市教育委员会的大力支持下，上海开放大学和联合国教科文组织终身学习研究所签署合作协议，设立项目合作办公室，联合实施研究和培训项目，促进成员国终身学习领域的人才培养和能力建设，助力联合国实现确保包容和公平的优质教育，让全民终身享有学习机会可持续发展目标。高等教育机构向终身学习机构转型成为推进实现 SDG 4目标的关键。因为高等教育机构在培养人们的技能和知识方面具有独特的能力，而且还可以调动教育资源，并为更广泛的人群提供学习机会。但高等教育机构究竟在多大程度上为扩大终身学习机会做出了行动？不同性质的高等教育机构之间又存在怎样的差距？对此，我们仍缺乏清晰的基本数据。作为3年合作的重要内容，上海开放大学和联合国教科文组织终身学习研究所、国际大学协会面向全球399所高等教育机构 开展了关于高等教育机构对终身学习的作用的调查研究。今天发布的这2本研究报告，高等教育终身学习的国际趋势和高等教育实施终身学习的制度实践，就是这项全球调查的研究成果。正如在报告中所反映的那样，不同国家和地区的高等教育机构在促进终身教育的内容、方法和重点领域等方面表现出了丰富性和多样性。基于对研究数据的分析，报告为各成员国的高等教育机构如何有效推动终身学习政策的研制和实施，提供了有针对性的10项具体行动建议。我们希望这份报告的发布能够帮助高等教育机构转型为终身学习教育机构，为社会更广泛阶层提供终身学习机会，推动实现新的教育社会契约。上海开放大学作为一所提供多样化、多层次的学历继续教育和非学历继续教育的开放高等教育机构，是中国最早参与教科文组织教习姊妹大学网络计划的高校之一。自1997年起至今，持续担任联合国教科文组织开放远程学习姊妹大学网络的组织单位。作为全面服务终身学习和建设学习型城市的平台型大学，上海开放大学非常愿意继续分享经验，开展更广泛的合作。为此，上海开放大学和联合国教科文组织终身学习研究所将继续合作，共同建设终身学习国际能力发展和研究园区，在全球范围内持续推动终身学习的发展，提升高等教育机构对终身学习的贡献度。作为合作的重要内容之一，今年10月19日到20日，我们将在上海举办面向终身学习的高等教育转型、新战略和新实践的国际会议。我们将发布高等教育终身学习的国际趋势和高等教育实施终身学习的制度实践这2本报告的中文版本，并就如何进一步推动大学在应对当前和未来社会挑战方面开展深入的讨论。在此，我代表主办方邀请各位专家届时莅临上海。我们相信，经由各成员国的共同努力，全球同行一定可以建设一个前景光明、成果共享的终身学习共同体，携手让终身学习成为现实。最后，我们期待上海再相聚。谢谢。
Many thanks, President Dia, for referring to this close cooperation between UIL and SOU and the coming work that we will be doing on this and other topics, and also for this invitation for the next conference in Shanghai in October, presenting these publications in the international arena, but launching the Chinese version of both of them. Without further delay, I will give the floor now to Mrs. Hillige van 't Land. She's the Secretary General of the International Association of Universities, to present the importance of lifelong learning, higher education institutions perspective. She has been an important partner for the survey. So I'll give you the floor, Hillige, 5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Raul Costera. Very nice and a very warm welcome to this webinar here today. I'm very pleased and proud as Secretary General of the International Association of Universities to partner with UNESCO, with UIL in particular, with the Open University in Shanghai Open University to host this specific webinar today. But I would like to give back to everyone who's also sitting at the table with us, because without all the partners who will speak later, this whole project would have never found its way to you through the screen today. So it's very important to co-host it. It was interesting that the title we discussed for the session is actually called "The Importance of Lifelong Learning for Higher Education Institutions." And I think we also could very easily revert it, the importance of higher education institutions to the future of lifelong learning and quality higher education opportunities for lifelong learning, because that is also at the heart of everything that we did. I think that Boren Chakroun already said it very eloquently, and so did Mr. Wei Jia, the president of Shanghai Open Universities. The future is one where we are looking for many more opportunities for lifelong learning competence building. So we need universities to get involved much more. So we were very pleased to actually participate more specifically in the trends analysis. What's the state of play today? Where are universities positioning themselves? What is the role of overall higher education and the sector when it comes to lifelong learning opportunities? And we launched a joint global survey on higher education and research for lifelong learning. And we launched it at a very peculiar time. You will remember, and you heard the dates already. It was open at the beginning of 2020, very complex period then, because universities were challenged by so many things in the midst and the heart of the pandemic. And it was interesting to see that despite that, 400 some universities took part in the survey and reflected on their role when it comes to the future of higher education for lifelong learning. And so if we would do it again today, I guess we would have even more responses. And I'm very pleased to hear that this cooperation between UIL and SOU will continue into the future and will allow to actually have these trends analysis over time. Universities have always been interested in providing for high quality education, also when it comes to lifelong learning opportunities. Yet the whole higher education system as it is developed and has been developing over time does not always provide for the opportunity for them to offer these lifelong learning spaces in the best possible ways. It requires training and upskilling even of the staff, of the people who come to the universities. It requires funding opportunities. And where there is a real will to offer these opportunities, also using the higher education settings, there's not always everything that follows that allows universities to actually advance on that terrain. So it will be very interesting to hear about institutional practices, about regional practices from dear colleagues who have been at the heart of the shaping of the survey itself, but also of the follow-up project on the practices when it comes to lifelong learning from the University College Cork, from institutions such as St. Joseph University of Beirut in Lebanon, also a member of the IAU, or from RECLA, and certainly also from the EUA, who has done a lot of work in that field. But we had many other partners. We had the IIEP, we had UNESCO IESALC, we had also the African Association of Universities. So we've called in many players to actually really have the right questions in the survey and an opportunity for universities to report on where this is going. So I will not reveal much more than this, but I think that the overall achievements and the report that you have is a baseline. And yet these are trends that could be measured, maybe not the most recent ones, because we couldn't involve and engage everyone due to what I explained earlier, these other challenges that came to universities. Yet it offered a real opportunity to already try and understand what's happening at universities and where they try to find their feet in a space that is developing to the full, and in the future we'll see even more attention to be paid to it, as there will be more and more people asking for it. So I would really like us to applaud the fact that there will be follow-up projects and looking at what role universities can play, how they can play it, and how they can be supported to do so. And it will be very interesting now to hear about the very practices that our colleagues will be able to share. So an honor to be part of this. For the IAU, just one quick additional line. This forms part of the whole work that the IAU has started for a few years now on the future of higher education, how it is transforming. There we have partnered with UNESCO on several occasions, all the occasions also underlined by Boren Chakroun at the beginning, and not the least the World Higher Education Conference or the Transforming Education Summit or the various reports on the transformation of higher education. And we will be very pleased to support any activity moving into the future to complement actually activities that are carried out either at the Asian level, the European level, or any others, and also bring in the global perspectives. So thank you for being with us. I look forward to the presentations and certainly also to the questions that will come from the floor.
Thank you very much, Hilde. Thank you for explaining a little bit the process of the survey, how challenging was in times of COVID, but I think with great support from the association, of course, but also other partners helping us to promote it. So thank you for that. And now let me, with all these introductions and elements, let's go into the meat of the research. So let me give the floor to my colleague, Edith Hammer, who has been at the front of the research project for the last 3 years. She will be sharing us some of the main findings, and I'll give you then the floor, Edith, for you to present this in 12-15 minutes. Floor is yours.
Good afternoon, a warm welcome also from my side. I would ask Paolo to share the PowerPoint. Okay. Wonderful, thank you. So I will now give you an overview of the research that we conducted. And as mentioned already, during the last year, we already had several occasions to present selected survey results, such as at the World Higher Education Conference in Barcelona last year. And we are now very pleased to have the full reports ready, comprising the survey results, but also selected case studies. And so I will now present some of the broader scope of the research results. The main questions and issues which guided our research were to explore how universities and other higher education institutions contribute to lifelong learning. So that means making learning available not only to traditional cohorts of young students, but to provide learning also to people from different backgrounds and at different stages of their lives. And as traditional hubs of knowledge, higher education institutions are very well positioned to be lifelong learning institutions. But this requires a shift from their traditional mandates, and this discussion is actually not new. It's been around for a couple of decades already, and now from our research we can see good advancements, very good advancements, but also limitations and challenges of institutions. So in terms of the scope, we were interested to explore the national policy environments that influence lifelong learning in higher education, but also to look at the institutional strategies and governance structures that have been developed. And when it comes to implementation, we mainly focused on the provision of diversified learning, on flexible learning pathways and alternative credentials, but also on technology-enhanced learning, as well as community engagement and partnerships built with the private sector. So the two reports that are launched today, the first one is the International Trends of Lifelong Learning in Higher Education report, and this summarizes the survey results of 399 higher education institutions in 96 countries, and it was the first step of our research. The survey results provide a quantitative overview of the state of lifelong learning in higher education, and this data was then complemented with qualitative research. So in the second part of the research, we conducted 6 case studies. Paolo, next slide, please. Of universities that have taken part in the international survey. And we selected them based on the fact that they already demonstrated a strong commitment to lifelong learning and that they had a track record of implementing it. We also considered a regional distribution of institutions and their a mix of public and private institutions, as well as distance, mixed mode and campus-based institutions, to have a broad scope of different universities. Actually, all of them are universities. And the results of these 6 case studies have been captured in the second report launched today. So the universities that were chosen were the Universidad Nacional del Litoral in Argentina, the Université de Montréal in Canada, East China Normal University in China, the University College Cork in Ireland, from which we will hear more today also, St. Joseph University of Beirut in Lebanon. Also, we have a representative here to share some insights, and Deji University in Uganda. And from 2 of these, we will now hear more also after this overview. So let us move to the results. In terms of national legislation, the survey responses showed that 68.2% of institutions have national legislation in the country which defines lifelong learning as a mission of higher education, which is quite an impressive number. And to know a little bit more about the legislative environment in the case studies, we could see that actually there is a lack of comprehensive policy for lifelong learning in higher education. So often this mandate for lifelong learning has a specific focus. And continuing education and flexible learning pathways appear to be the most developed areas in national policy. And this emphasis on continuing education and professional education is actually reflected throughout the research. And we could see that sometimes continuing education appears to be understood as synonymous with lifelong learning in the context of higher education. So when we move to the institutional level, 68.2% also of surveyed institutions stated to have a strategy for lifelong learning in place at some level, either institutional level, faculty, department level, or both. And as compared to this number is much higher in those institutions that where national legislation defines lifelong learning as a mission of higher education. And it is much lower in institutions where no such conducive legislation exists. So we can see a significant correlation between the legislative national policy environment and the existence of institutional strategies, underlining the importance of national frameworks. And from the case studies, we can also see that lifelong learning can be reflected in various institutional strategic documents. Examples are Deji University's strategic plan, or St. Joseph University of Beirut's constitution, East China Normal University's charter, all of which include references to lifelong learning principles, such as the commitment to market responsive continuing education, community development, and wider societal impact. Quite interestingly, actually, the case studies also revealed that in some instances, even though it was stated in the survey that an institutional strategy exists, this strategy appeared not to exist as a specific policy document, but lifelong learning was rather reflected in a variety of texts that refer to it and materialized through a series of more or less coordinated measures. And so this suggests that the understanding of what is an institutional lifelong learning strategy may indeed be interpreted quite differently among stakeholders. So when it comes to governance, we asked in the survey if universities had a central unit coordinating lifelong learning, and a bit over half of the institutions responded to have such unit. And in terms of the functions, also here we can see that reflected focus of continuing education, so offering and selling education programs and training was the most selected option for function of lifelong learning unit. Also curricular development and community engagement is quite relevant. Other functions are include staff development, facilitating flexible learning pathways, and enhancing graduate employability. And while we can see that several institutions that were included in our case studies research have such central unit, for example, the Adult and Continuing Education Center at the University College Cork and the Faculty of Continuing Education at the Université de Montréal. There are also, it is also a common model that lifelong learning is rather decentralized and sometimes even quite scattered within the institutions. And for example, at the Universidad Nacional del Litoral, the provision is quite dispersed. So just to name a few offices that are involved in lifelong learning provision there, the Linkage and Technology Transfer Secretariat is responsible for employability related programs. On the other hand, Cultural and Social Extension Secretariat is responsible for community oriented programs. And then in addition to that, also the academic faculties, the Wellbeing, Health and Quality of Life Secretariat and the Academic and Institutional Planning Secretariat are in charge of providing lifelong learning. So we can see that there's quite a lot of variation in how lifelong learning is coordinated in the institutional context. When it comes to target groups, one quite interesting result of the research was which are the most prioritized target groups for higher education, for lifelong learning in higher education. And here we could clearly see that working people requiring upskilling and reskilling were the most selected, and also public and private organizations and women and higher education staff are among the most prioritized groups. And in comparison to that, older people, unemployed learners, people with disabilities, but also people living in remote areas, ethnic and religious minorities, are much less prioritized. And so this suggests that the most vulnerable groups are generally less taken into account for lifelong learning, while labor market oriented learning has become an important part of institutions' lifelong learning agenda. And I think it's important to underline here that there is a need to diversify access and participation in higher education in order to make lifelong learning inclusive and available to all groups of society, and in particular those non-traditional learners. When it comes to enhancing flexibility and access, 70.3% of the institutions responded in the survey that they offer dedicated programs for adult learners that lead to degrees. And in terms of provision, we can see that for bachelor, master, and doctoral programs, the provision is still quite traditional in terms of full-time and on-campus study. And when it comes to shorter qualifications, certificates, diplomas, postgraduate courses, there appears to be more flexibility. So part-time, distance, and blended learning options are more available. Also, institutions, a bit over half of the institutions offer at least one form of alternative digital and non-digital credential, with non-credit certificates being the most common option, but also stackable credits and micro-credentials are becoming more and more popular. Another important tool to make learning in higher education more accessible and to make it more diverse is the establishment of flexible learning pathways. And in the survey, 66.4% of the institutions stated to have policies in place to support flexible learning pathways. And also 57.4% stated to have information and guidance services in place, which are crucial to ensure the pathways are not only available, but that they can also be used by the learners. And a good example for enhancing flexible learning pathways, we could see from the case studies research, and this is at Université de Montréal, where the Faculty of Continuing Education offers a broad range, actually 280 credit programs for upskilling and reskilling of adult learners. And they are delivered in the evenings through blended learning options and the summer courses. The university also offers stackable credits that allows for personalized learning routes and make it more accessible for adult learners. Also, there are access and bridging programs for learners who do not meet the standard entry requirements, so providing them with alternative access to undergraduate programs, and access to degree programs is also possible through the recognition of prior learning with support services being available. So this is quite a comprehensive system of ensuring flexible learning pathways. The use of technologies for learning has also enhanced flexibility and led to widening access. And in the survey, the most selected options for technology-enhanced learning were live online lectures and seminars, as well as blended and hybrid learning. So we could see that still the very common options are most used. And the data also shows that MOOCs are used among 34.6% of institutions, whereas, for example, artificial intelligence is only used by 16% of institutions in the context of lifelong learning provision. For sure, we will see many new developments in that field with AI technologies such as ChatGPT-4, and these large language models will certainly change and further advance students' learning processes in the next years. When it comes to the use of technologies from our case studies research, we can see quite interesting examples of extending learning opportunities to non-traditional groups of learners, such as learners with disabilities, part-time students, older learners, and people living in remote areas. And one example, for example, from the East China Normal University, they are reaching out to older learners in particular and conducting research on how to better integrate them in education. And they have started a collaboration with Shanghai's Municipal Education Commission for this purpose, which also focuses on integrating artificial intelligence more effectively into teaching and learning technologies for older learners. Another example is the Universidad Nacional del Litoral, which has, particularly during the COVID-19 period, enabled online access to people living in remote areas, also considering low connectivity in those more rural areas. So it can be said that online learning can certainly enhance access, but also institutions have been challenged to reach out to non-traditional groups of learners, in particular if technologies are not available, if the knowledge to use them is not available among particular community groups. In terms of community engagement, which was the last thematic area of our questionnaire and also of our case studies, there we can see a very high engagement. 98% of institutions stated to engage with local communities in a variety of ways, as you can see on the chart. And this is quite similar also for relationships with the private sector, where also 98% of institutions stated to have such established relationships. And actually for this topic, we have conducted a more extensive research that will also be published as part of an edited book at the start of next year. So to come to the conclusion, the presentation provided some snapshots of our research, and we will share the full reports, and many more examples and data and details will be available there. I would just like to close quickly with 3 messages. First, that for higher education institutions to fulfill their lifelong learning mandate, it is crucial to widen access and participation and to diversify learning provision. This must go beyond upskilling and reskilling of educated people, well-educated people, but importantly address the needs of vulnerable and non-traditional groups. Second, lifelong learning is key for sustainable development. Universities are key to extend learning opportunities to local communities. They can support social equity, community resilience, and support the strengthening of local economies, also in light of the climate crisis. And third, there is a need to rethink and transform education. Higher education institutions need to develop holistic strategies that guide their lifelong learning implementation. For this, we also need supportive national policies that define lifelong learning as their mission, and in particular view of current and future socioeconomic transformations, there needs to be a right to lifelong learning. So thank you very much, and I hope you will enjoy reading the 2 reports. Thank you.
I think this was a very concrete and clear presentation of the research, but together also with the cases we work with. I think it promotes very much this interest to learn more about the results of the two publications. Thank you very much. As we are running short in time, I will move immediately to the next section. Please remember that if you have any questions during the presentation, please just use the Q&A section. We will now listen to very concrete cases of institutional practices that Edith referred to while framing the survey. And first, I would like to give the floor to Seamus Otuoma, Director of Adult Continuing Education at the University Cork in Ireland. Seamus, you have 8 minutes, please, for a very nice presentations on the experience at your university. Please go ahead.
You see my screen? Can you see my presentation?
We can see it. If you can put it, please, in
yeah, I'll do that. Sorry now for sorry, into some problems here. Okay, I'll go quickly since I've wasted a lot of my 8 minutes now. But I'll just very quickly go over the model that we have in ACE at UCC. So I suppose it's really critically important for us that we see our mission as animating the idea of leaving no one behind. We see that as our mission. We see it as our goal, and we repeat this every day in every way that we can. And in that regard, I suppose we see ourselves as being very closely aligned with the overall mission of UNESCO and UIL in particular. So we adopt a partnership model. So every single program is developed in partnership. We don't any longer develop any program unless it's in partnership. We have about 3,000 part-time students. We try to be responsive. So we're constantly engaging with external partners in terms of developing new programs and also addressing the needs of learners. We try to be as flexible as possible. So in terms of our delivery modes, in terms of our design and so on, we try to be as inclusive as possible of the widest possible range of students. And relevance, we try to always remain relevant. Now, to describe what we do is we have a dual academic core. We are a university-based institution. So one part of our academic core is around scholarship on lifelong learning. And the second core, which is a very strong strength for us, is each of our programs are also anchored within the relevant academic discipline. We see ourselves as a networking university. So we have to be responsive to the needs of our neighbours, our city, our country, and globally where we can. We try to drive an ethos of equality and diversity and inclusion. And we try to address our delivery mode in as wide a range as possible, including in the community and including in industry and so on and so forth. We have a wide range of activities, and I just move quickly to those because I realize time is pressing. So this gives you an impression, I suppose, of the different kinds of things we do. So we have adult and community education, which is aimed at the community and especially at marginalized communities, marginalized groups, ethnic minorities, and so on. We have continuing education and enterprise engagement, which is aimed at industry, private sector. We have short courses, primarily aimed at retired people, but not exclusively so. Springboard Plus is a Government of Ireland initiative, which is aimed at reskilling people for the workforce. Micro-credentials are a very big part of what we are now doing. And when I talk about micro-credentials, these include micro-credentials that are aimed at enabling people at all levels. That includes community groups, ethnic minorities, migrants, as well as in industry and in skilling. Learning cities and learning neighborhoods are really, really important for us. We are deeply, deeply, deeply engaged in the UNESCO Learning City project, and we see this as a huge benefit to us in terms of what we do and how we engage with partners. In a rural context, we have something similar in what we call Skelly Cree, which is South Kerry. We work in the prisons. We also try to, as far as possible, contribute to scholarly research locally, nationally, and globally. And we also are seen by the university as a way of incubating and innovating in areas that might not otherwise happen. Leave no one behind, as I said, is in everything that we do and think. We have partnerships, external partnerships with community groups, NGOs. We have connections with employers and employer organizations. We work with other education providers. We work with the Learning City and the Learning Neighbourhoods. So these are all very, very important for us. Also, in terms of our internal partners, we collaborate with all the 4 colleges of our university, as many academic departments as possible, to try and create as wide a range of programs as possible. We also engage with the student support dimensions of the university and the professional services, because as what we're trying to do is we're trying to create an ecosystem within our university that's as open and flexible and welcoming as to the widest possible number of students and the widest range of students. So we try to dismiss the idea of the ivory towers. We definitely are out there and trying to get into the community. We try to break down barriers, and this is a really, really important issue for us, to make sure that we remove the normal barriers that get in the way of people progressing and accessing our. We try to be as responsive as possible. And, you know, I have the word win-win here, but I think we are talking about win-win-win. So we try to create a winning situation for our partners within the university, for our external partners, but the most important person in everything we do is the learner at the end of it. And so just to give you a very quick view of what we do in relation to why learners are at the center of what we do. We try to widen access through creating programs that are aimed at the learner groups. We try to nuance what we do, and we do this in a very, very active way through also co-design with people. We want that our learners become part of our learning community. This creates social capital for people as well, which is really, really important. And we don't ever try to dilute academic quality. We maintain standards. In fact, sometimes we say we take a little step higher than the rest of the university to ensure that we maintain standards. So it's not diluting quality, it's enhancing quality. And just very quickly, these are some pictures of some of the students, just to give you a sense. The top left-hand corner are a group of Irish traveller women. Irish travellers are a tiny ethnic minority in Ireland, but they are the most excluded group in terms of the educational process. So we had over 20 Irish traveller women involved in this programme. On the bottom left-hand side, this programme was aimed at recently arrived Ukrainian and Syrian refugees and asylum seekers in Ireland. And we turned this program around very, very, very quickly in a very flexible way. And we ran it during last summer with the collaboration and cooperation of all the partners in the university. And the one on the right-hand side is our Sanctuary Scholar Scheme. So it just gives you a picture of one of the groups that graduated from that. So what are the things that we think are important? We realise that nurturing a culture of lifelong learning within the university context is challenging. We know this every day, but it's really important for us, and it's really important we drive that mission. And I think that message has come through in the speakers have spoken before me as well. Funding is still a challenge. It's a big challenge, but we try to deal with that. Our partnership model allows us to do things that we wouldn't be able to do. We reach a wider variety of learners. We can increase our resources through some of those partnerships, which we can then apply in other areas. And the design process really benefits from engaging in co-design with a wide range of partners. And we also feel that our partnership model helps us to contribute to a global lifelong learning agenda through our connections with UIL, the ASM Lifelong Learning Hub, and other contexts. And I suppose the most important thing that we see is relationships, building relationships, and ensuring that all our partners, whether they're the learners or our internal partners or our external partners, that everybody benefits. We try to create mutually beneficial relationships with everybody. So I'm just going to leave it there because I know time is very limited. I know I've gone through this very, very quickly, but these slides are available to you, and I'm sure anybody who needs them can get them. And you can follow up on some of these by going to some of these web pages. So that's me done, Raoul. I hope I stayed within the time frame.
Amazing. Thank you, Seamus. Thank you for allowing us to go a little inside on the machinery of the UCC. It's very interesting to keep in mind and be very clear that the main messages is to leave no one behind, and also how you're connecting the dots with different voices of society, and really establishing partnership as the main issue in order to continue moving in the implementation of lifelong learning. Thank you, Seamus, very much. I will then move to Mr. Fadi Elaghe. He's the Delegate of Director for Professional Development, Professional Training Center of the St. Joseph University of Beirut in Lebanon. Mr. Fadi, you have 8 minutes for your presentation, please. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the invitation. Can you see my slides?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, thank you. So, as you said, I'm the director of the Professional Training Center at St. Joseph University in Beirut. And because we believe that anyone who stops learning is also, we believe a lot in lifelong learning. As you know, lifelong learning is very important to increase chances, to evaluate our goals, to get healthy brain, to be happy at work. So that's why we create a professional training center at St. Joseph University. And this professional training center has been created in 2017. CFP works closely with all 33 continuing education officers, delegates of the institutes and faculty of USG. So our model is a professional training center related to the rector and the rectorate of the university, and we collaborate closely with all the institutions of St. Joseph University, the faculties and the institutions. The center became a reference platform linking the academic world to the professional world. And the organigram of our center is designed with a steering committee with 22 persons, a scientific committee to validate all the programs, the content of the programs, and institutional responsible for continuing education in each faculty. That's why we collaborate with 33 colleagues. We have a business development coordinator, an administrative coordinator, and a communication officers. The main idea of our center is to build the research done in the academic world, to use the results of the research to base our programs on this research, to build a link with the professional world. So guiding innovative and sustainable change by delivering high-level experience at academic, social, and professional sectors to build this link between the results of the research and the training programs. Our mission is to provide expertise and excellent services in the following areas: continuing education, consultancy, project design, and management. The center is active in 3 areas, actually. When I talk about continuing education, the center designs and manages customized, tailor-made continuing training programs. And that's how we build relationships with the professional world and answering their needs, and in building and designing programs, tailor-made programs for them in Lebanon and in the region. And also we create what we call scheduled continuing training programs to which one can register. So we deliver certificates and short programs. In terms of consultancy, the center analyzes market needs, carries out impact studies, and ensures necessary follow-up to contribute to institutional development. And also we work on project design and management. In our center, actually, we deliver two kinds of training internally. So at the university itself, work also to deliver like leadership programs, professional development programs for the staff of the university, but also externally with companies, health and education organization, universities, training centers, and the public and private sectors at the Lebanese and international levels to propose projects to ESG faculties and institutes. Our areas of intervention are various because we have 13 faculties at St. Joseph University and more than 20 institutions. So we deliver training in all our on all disciplines. What are the success factors in our training center? First of all, the creation of a department for internal training. It helps a lot for the internal professional development. The variety of topics. So alongside topical, technical, and disciplinary training on a variety of themes like artificial intelligence, ethical hacking, big data, digital business, etc. The center also develops training programs targeting the development of 21st century skills. So we have technical programs, but also programs based on 21st century skills. And we build, as I said, the link between the results of the research and our training programs. The second point is the diversity of resources. Thanks to the diversity of resources and expertise provided by USG, and we analyze the market and we deliver all our programs based on this analysis. We build partnership with the professional world, and we do follow-up coaching. So we don't only deliver like punctual programs or certificate programs, but we do coaching and we follow up of our programs. The third point is the modalities of training programs. We have in-person training, we have online training, synchronous and co-modal mode, distance learning, hybrid training, institution-based training, and self-directed training. The fourth point is the innovation. The innovation in training subjects like agile leadership, mindfulness, and other innovations. We have diagnostic tools like assessment and needs identification, intervention modalities, the types of training, the tools we use, and especially the evaluation system. We have many tools to assess the quality of our programs and the trainers' competencies. And the importance of coaching, as I said, we don't deliver only punctual programs, but we do follow-up for skills enhancement, long-term change, motivation, and evaluation of results. And I think the types of training programs are interesting too, because we deliver workshops, but we deliver also what we call training through research. So sometimes we don't deliver a training program for lifelong learning, but we transform the participant into researchers, and they learn through the research. And what we call the research-based professional development is a very innovative approach, and participants appreciate so much, especially when they're in the professional world, to work as a researchers to learn, not only as a participants, and also through video analysis. So those are examples of our trainings, and this is to emphasize the idea that we build our trainings on the research results. And then I will move to our interactive teaching methods. In our interventions, we use very interactive teaching methods like interactive presentation, brainstorming, a minute paper, cooperative learning, flipped classroom, project-based learning, etc. So our workshops are very, very interactive. We can discuss these issues later on if we have time. So these are some photos of our trainings in the center. And what is very important is the trilingualism of our trainers. So we speak, our trainers are trilingual, so we can deliver trainings. And it is very important in the region and in Lebanon to deliver trainings in English, in French, and in Arabic. And this is a very important point. And then we deliver our trainings not only in Lebanon, but also in the region of Gulf and Africa. What are our challenges? The financial considerations, and it has been said by my colleagues. So the fundraising is a very important issue, especially after our financial crisis in Lebanon. The competition in Lebanon and internationally, the recognition of continuing education programs by the Minister of Education. So maybe it is a Lebanese issue, but all our programs are not recognized by the ministry to have credits, as assessment and recognition, and the continuing curriculum updates in rapidly evolving fields such as technology, sciences. We need to be all the time very up to date. The personalization and flexibility. Lifelong learners have diverse backgrounds, interests, and learning styles. The motivation and engagement in some programs, the time constraints, because participants need to balance between their work, their family, the personal commitments, and those are challenging issues, and the accessibility and infrastructure of our professional training center, and the centralization. This is maybe also a specific challenge, how to at the same time be centralized at university, but at the same time collaborate with all the faculty of the university. So here I have a video for 1 minute. You tell me if I still have time or not.
Professor El Hage, you have yes, just 1 minute to go. So if you present the video, that will be the conclusion part.
Okay.
Many thanks to you. Really, thank you for sharing all this valuable information, for recognizing the need of so different learners and the way you approach it. Thank you. I think we have a lot of interest on learning more of the work the center has been doing. Thank you. Thank you very much. We need to move on very fast. So now let us have some regional perspectives from two experts and members of this advisory group that we established 3 years ago, Women's UAL-SOU, to accompany the research process. So I would like to invite first Margarita Guarello de Toro. She's the president of RECLA. I don't know if still is the case, Margarita, but you are quite relevant in the region on this topic. I'll give you 5 minutes, Margarita, please. I'm cutting the time, but things work like that. You are mute, so we cannot hear you.
Okay, thanks. I'm going to share a presentation. Okay, if you let me.
Yes, sure, Paulo.
Okay. Okay. Good morning. We are early morning. So I am Margarita Guarello. I'm living in Santiago de Chile. Actually, I am former president of RECLA. And I'm working at UC Chile, and working on for development of the training, the master programs. So I want to share today some thoughts about highest lifelong learning in Latin America. But first, I need to put some point, very important, because LATAM is a vast and diverse territory, and the system and heights are different from each other and within each country. I live in Chile, and my country is different from Brazil, Mexico, or Ecuador, and the highest policies and the experiences are different as well, the geography, the cities, and the culture. And I think this is an important topic because in Latin America, the main issues are not lifelong learning, are the access and funding for traditional studies. Yet these are our topics. And we can say we nowadays we leave a lot of people behind. We are still leaving a lot of people behind. So about the results of the investigation, I think the results in Latin America show a lack of policy toward lifelong learning in the region and the universities too. And I have a conceptual situation because the findings about programs and audiences are closer than continuing education than lifelong learning. And I think it's not the same. Continuing education is a kind of programs, very specifically, but lifelong learning is an approach, a different approach. So I think we have a confusion about it. But the results show some important strengths I want to talk about too. The first is the very high recognized and reputation that universities have in the region. They work in different strategies and level of relationship with society, but it is a transversal commitment and concern called third mission, which has been adopted under different names throughout the region. I think this is a very important pillar for go further lifelong learning. Other important strength is wide experience in continuing education, which I said for me is not the same as lifelong learning. What are some important pillars? First, teaching people beyond traditional audiences and opening higher education to new and diverse people and communities. For instance, in my university, UC Chile, which is a quite selective university as the undergraduate level, is an open and inclusive university at continued education. So this is a very important issue. And what the university has done for that, first, developing flexible and dynamic programs, which is different than the master programs and the undergraduate programs. Innovating technologies.
Sorry, you have 1 minute to wrap up.
Okay.
1 minute.
Okay. So some proposals for you. First, transform educational projects from a lifelong wide learning perspective. I think it's not just lifelong learning, it's wide learning too. So redefining the HIS in this perspective. And now what we need to do, for instance, dialogue. Our region doesn't talk about these topics. We are talking about other issues. So in order to build horizontal and vertical learning pathways, a common credit system at regional level, and how we can have funding mechanism in order to finance a lot of people and not leave someone behind. We think this is a very important mission for us. Okay, I'm on time. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. You're very kind. Thank you. Thank you for sharing this general view. I think it makes a lot of sense because of the reality that the different countries, well, sub-regions, countries are living. It's quite unique, and we need to reflect on that. I'll move then to give the floor to Therese Sang, Deputy Director of the Higher Education Policy Unit in the European University Association. Very much, I need to say that together with Margarita, very much supporting also the work of our research in these 3 years. So, Therese, yes, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Raul. I was expecting you to ask me to do that in 2 minutes, so I'll try to not retain too much of your time. Thank you for the opportunity to be here, and we are, of course, very happy to have collaborated with the UNESCO Lifelong Learning Institute and all other colleagues in the room for this important research project. So I don't have any slides. I just would like to provide a kind of comment, if I may, on mostly based on the presentation of findings by Edith earlier. So the European University Association, EUA, that I represent here today, represents the university sector in the European higher education area, so 49 countries with over 870 institutions, and also the national representations of universities in their respective countries. And we have worked quite a bit indeed on lifelong learning since 2007, I think already. Some studies, project, but also peer learning-based approaches and engaging with our members. And it's really interesting to see also from the most recent data you collected through that survey, Edith, that it's also confirming some of the trends we have been following up in the past decade, I'm tempted to say, at least. The first one for me was that there is no one-size-fits-all model for taking up lifelong learning in Europe. There have been, let's say, historical units, units with a long tradition in charge of adult and continuing education at universities. We have heard about one example precisely with UCC, or also faculties of continuing education, open faculties, etc. And there are also for sure all kinds of provision available that account for lifelong learning at all types of universities under the format of MOOCs, for example, or certificate or any other type of non-degree education provision. And we also have different national frameworks catering for stackability of these credits that you can earn throughout lifetime. You have some countries, for example, where recognition of prior learning are subject to quite strong national policies. Think about France, for example. And last but certainly not least, there is also a whole policy agenda focusing on widening access relating to recognition of prior learning, but also to the inclusion agenda, in the sense that it's not only about recognizing and valorizing across prior, be it formal, non-formal, or informal learning, but also students with a background of first generation, tertiary education graduate, etc. What is interesting here is to observe that all these priorities may, but also may not connect at the same university. So universities may have different parts working on those priorities, but in a different way, sometimes hopefully in a complementary way, but not necessarily. So it's also a complex situation here where we need to think about what would work best for each institution to relate with the lifelong learning agenda. What we can also see, and I think Director Shakun has very much very clearly expressed it earlier, is also the rise of this whole narrative about skills demand, upskilling, reskilling, but also relating to radical transformation in society, in economy, relating to automation, etc., etc. This is not new, we all know that. But I would say that the pressure on universities to, the expectation on universities to be part of the game is also raising, and also connected to the strong demand for more flexible learning provision, either under the format of non-degree education or, and this is perhaps gaining in importance since the pandemic, also under the format of more flexible ways to learn, but in a curricular context. So the idea to cut off students who are not the traditional full-time daytime students, but engaging them through regular curriculum adapted to their needs and not a separate, distinct offer. So this is also a trend that is kind of rising a bit, but also we see that universities are expected to address flexible learning also in the curricular context. So challenges and considerations, and those were already underlined by previous speakers, so I will not go in length through this, but I think we all agree there are efforts to make in terms of validation, recognition of prior learning, and stackability. So how to sort an amount and scaffold units of learning into a degree, for example. Continuing education, that would be my second point, has existed for a long time, but the question is still how to make non-degree learning part of the core mission of a university. It may be driven by individual staff or units, but how to mainstream it, how to make it mainstream across the whole institution with a dedicated structure, with own staff, with legal regulations, quality assurance provision, and financial model is also a question. And also, there is still an issue sometimes of identifying the demand for lifelong learning. So coordinating the offer across the higher education sector, be it nationally, also internationally, because we live in a digital world where there is digital provision, cross-border digital provision for lifelong learning. I will perhaps conclude here also because I think, Raoul, you're desperately looking for some time still for discussion, just by saying and reflecting a bit on the role of higher education in learning generally. It's also a question of how we at universities want to make learning visible, self-reflective for students, for students who are already at the university, and part of a lifelong learning perspective. So in other words, how to train current students into adopting this lifelong learning perspective. And this is also something we probably should be looking into. All right, I hope I wasn't too long, Raoul, and I'm handing the floor back to you. Thank you.
Perfect, as usual, Teresa. Thank you very much. I think you highlight very important, crucial points that will deserve some discussion and possibly more research, because in a way there are like things happening quite fast, and we need to be able to respond to those. But thank you very much. I need to continue moving on, and would like to open the floor to some response of questions. But first, I would like to invite Nora Lawrence for a 1-minute comment. Nora is a former UL colleague who was strongly involved in the research, in particular for the statistical analysis, and who is now a PhD candidate at the German Center of Higher Education Research and Science Studies in Hanover. Nora, very nice to see you, and of course you can see that we have been progressing. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Raoul. Well, first of all, it's great to be here, and it's great to see that the publication is out. I'm very happy to see it out in the world and flourishing. Maybe just a word on the sort of research process and the analysis process, which I was asked to share. I started getting into the project when we got all of the data in, and I think one of the main takeaways that we saw immediately, which was so interesting, was although there were some big general trends visible, there was also so much heterogeneity. So just the response that institutions themselves had and the ways that they approached lifelong learning was so different by region, by institutional setting, by national context, by type of institution, and so on. So it was really sort of hard to point down what exactly was happening. And also, as Edith has mentioned before, some of the institutions wouldn't even call the practices that they were employing lifelong learning. So it was really just this gigantic variety. And in that sense, I fully agree with what Hilgi has said. It's very much a starting point to also showcase the variety that is out there. And the survey data is a great way to be a baseline and to then from then on go a bit deeper into all the different aspects to uncover. So yeah, maybe that as a first point, and then to just briefly mention in relation to that, I fully agree that it is quite important to have more data on this, and I think the survey is a great contribution to just find out more about all the different institutional practices, but then also have a chance to employ mixed method research and have the case studies sort of in conjunction with the data to dig a bit deeper and sort of uncover the dynamics underlying some of the numbers that have been presented. So yeah, once again, it's great to see this out in the world, and I think it is a very inspirational document for higher education institutions and policymakers alike.
Thanks a lot, Nora. Thank you for sharing, and really thank you for all your support. I would also like to appreciate the work of my colleague Mo Wang. Unfortunately, she was unable to join us, but she was also working together with Edith and Nora on this project very much. There are many questions. Some of them we are trying to answer to them. There is one very concrete that probably, Seamus, you can address this one because it's directed to you. How did you go about identifying partnerships? You have 1 minute for this one, Seamus. Sorry.
Well, I think the partnership building is a longer term process. We made it an absolute priority that anybody who came to us, we spoke to them and we engaged with them. So two things happen, I suppose. We've gone into the community, we've contacted partners, but also partners come to us. And I would have to say that the Learning City project has been very, very useful in relation to that, in terms of putting us in touch with lots and lots of partners. But, you know, I'm not going to say it's an easy process. And we have been in business for 75 years, not me personally, but the unit has been. So there's been a very, very long history of partnership building. So I would say, you know, it's a slow process. But you build it up over time and you gather momentum. The more partnerships you create, the more people want to become partners with you.
Thank you very much, Seamus. Well, given the reduced of time, I would like really to thank you very much. I would like to thank SOU and all partners who have been involved in the research project for the dedicated support through these 3 years. And this includes UNESCO colleagues, includes the advisory group, includes consultants, UL partners, etc. Definitely UL will continue working on higher education and lifelong learning with a focus on older people learning, also related to the use of ICTs, employability, and intergenerational approaches. We believe that higher education institutions are critical in promoting lifelong learning within the society. They are really critical to address current and future challenges related to increasing needs for upskilling, for reskilling, the climate crisis, and the need to foster green skills, the need to build resilience in community to mitigate and adapt the climate change. And at UAL, we would really aim to continue research in this field, in particular, linking higher education, lifelong learning, and climate action. We are committed to strengthen our current partnerships with universities, with the University Association, with policymakers, and with UNESCO colleagues. We are open to engage with new partners to advance this knowledge of the field. Last point, we will share the links to the online reports with all participants after the webinar. We would appreciate if you can help to distribute and promote the research within your networks. I think it's a way to continue the discussion in a way. Want to thank you very much for your time. Wish you all the best. Sorry for not having a more deep discussion, but we will have it, certainly. And this is just the beginning of a dialogue. So thank you very much. Have a nice rest of the day. Thank you for your attendance. Thanks. Goodbye.